December the 7th, the African Securities Exchanges Association yesterday formally launched the interconnected platform of African stock exchanges called the African Exchanges Linkage Project. That platform, launched in Abidjan at the BRVM Regional Stock Exchange in its initial phase, provides investors access to 7 connected exchanges on the continent, representing more than $1.5 billion in size. Now, the exchanges now linked together into a single trading platform are the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the Nigerian Exchange Limited, Egyptian Stock Exchange, the Casablanca Stock Exchange, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the Stock Exchange of Mauritius, and the BRVM itself, which is based in Abidjan, all for all the French-speaking West African countries. Joining me now for our discussion into this major development is Christian Orajekwe. He is the managing director at Cordros Securities Limited. Cordros, by the way, is one of the 30 brokerage firms that were selected across Africa to trade on the new Exchange Link single platform. Congratulations and a warm welcome to the show tonight, Christian. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you, Boston. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. Tell me more about this African Exchange Link project. Why could it be a game changer for the continent's securities market?
Okay, so like you mentioned, the African Exchange Linkage Program is an initiative, a joint initiative of ASEA and African Development Bank. Essentially, it is a platform that integrates a lot of African exchanges. I think before now, a lot of African exchanges have eventually been operating in silos. Members of the ASEA essentially trade in their markets, but with this new platform, what it means is that, I mean, what it brings new on the table is investors in Nigeria, for instance, are able to see the length and breadth of markets, of connecting members. So as a Nigerian investor, for instance, it gives you access to, say, the Nairobi Stock Exchange. You can see what happens in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, is one of the biggest exchanges in Africa. You can see what happens in the Egypt Stock Exchange. So this essentially helps to drive liquidity and the flow of investment across Africa. So when you think about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, for instance, from the commodity and the physical trading perspective, and then you think about, so you try to replicate that with the AELP, which essentially links investment across Africa.
So, but how does the exchange-linked trading platform work in practical terms? And who are the parties in the ecosystem?
Okay, so how it works in practical terms is there are platforms that are integrated. So what it means is that for Cordros, for instance, every stockbroker has a counterparty that the stockbroker is being linked to in other markets. So you sit in Nigeria, you are linked with a broker in, say, Kenya, for instance. So you have your platforms integrated. So I can sit in Nigeria and see very clearly the bid and the offer and the flow of investments in Kenya. I can see all the stocks listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and then I can route my trade. So I route my trade from Cordros, from my trading platform in Nigeria. It drops on the trading platform of my broker, my selected broker in Kenya, and then the trade is being executed and settled in Kenya in local currency. The participating members are the stockbrokers in the local market where the trade is originating, and the settlement markets, where the trade is being transacted. Other participating members are the custodians who are involved in the custody of the shares that I buy from Nigeria and settles in Kenya. The regulators in each of the markets are also parties here. And then the exchanges themselves, so are also participants. So these are the group of people who essentially are stakeholders in this project.
Well, you spent a number of years in the market, by the way, so you're a market professional. Settlement clearing part of whether it's going to be a T+1, T+2, T+3. So your firm, Cordros, was selected as one of the 30 brokerage firms, and I know that's not something that comes really easy, I'm sure. So across the 7 big exchanges in Africa, what does that really involve in a typical trade? Give me an idea. I want to buy some stock, MTN, for example, is not only listed in Nigeria, it's also listed on the South African Stock Exchange, for example. And maybe I want to buy Safaricom shares and I want to have a little bit of Safaricom in my portfolio and not just Airtel Africa and as well as MTN. So how does that really work for me as a retail investor walking through your door at Cordros Capital, as Cordros Securities, and say, get this done for me?
Okay, so how it works is you place your order through Cordros which is on day one. I put in your order through my system, and then I route it through my platform, and then it drops also on the platform of my trading party, and then the transaction is executed on same day, because this is a live trading platform, and so long as there's liquidity, so the transaction is closed on the same day. And in Nigeria, settlement essentially T+3. So the settlement cycle is also dependent on where in the market where you trade. When you trade in Kenya, for instance, 3+3 settlement. So again, it depends on the market where you trade. So we, for instance, in Cordros are linked with a broker in Kenya, as it were. So the same settlement, cycle applies. So when you buy any stock in T+3, it settles in your settlement account.
Are there issues around currency here? If I'm paying you in Naira in Nigeria, for example, to do a transaction, to do Safaricom for me, or I'm asking you to do a stock for me on the Egyptian Stock Exchange, Casablanca, Cleopatra Hospital, whatever, somewhere the electric, how would that be routed through the stock, which is traded in a different currency in Egypt, for example, the Egyptian pound?
Okay, so Bosan, as you know, this thing was essentially launched yesterday. I think we are still going through what we call a pilot phase essentially, and the payments is one of the big it's one of the big part of this project that needs to be sorted out. That payment part of it is important because you have to so the US dollar, for instance, is the global trading currency, right? So when I'm moving flows from my clients, we have to move, the USD from Nigeria essentially goes to Kenya, and then it's been exchanged for the local currency. So you cannot essentially, Nigeria is not one of the global trading currencies. So for investors who are trading, we have to aggregate dollars and then move to the market where we'll be interested in trading, and then it's been exchanged to local currency and used for trade settlements. So the same thing when the client sells his shares his or her shares in Kenya, and they need to repatriate money back to Nigeria, you have to exchange from the Kenya shilling back to the US dollar and then brought back to Nigeria for exchange in Naira. So that's essentially how it flows. So trades are not being closed right now because the payment part of this platform has to be sorted out.
A very big step moving forward, but to have a single trade link for 7 African exchanges is quite a very big step forward. Thank you so much, Christian Orajekwe, CEO at Cordros Securities Limited. Thank you, and we wish you folks all the best as you continue to track this very important development on the annals of the African securities exchanges.